Now, the Reserve Bank have been relentless with its raising of interest rates to slow inflation. Many of us are very nervous of the coming months, especially if you have a mortgage. So rising interest rates, and why is inflation so hot? So much to talk about. The current state of the property market, renters versus landlords, the housing crisis, where should we live? There's also like a wave of immigration being planned. Lots to talk about. So we need to turn to the hotline and talk to, from Master Advocates Real Estate Services, program regular and a mate of mine, it's Mark Errichiello. G'day, Mark.
Hey, good. Thanks for having me on. Sorry, I'll excuse my dog barking.
Yeah, no worries. We should we know a bit about your dog, and I know it's at that early hour in the morning, mate. You better make sure. Is it Strudel? Strudel.
Yeah. The beast. She's become a motif.
Beast. Yeah.
So it's, no. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
No worries.
Pleasure.
My pleasure. Look,
here.
I've made those notes here, Mark, but and we know each other, so we can just get on and have a chat. I just know property is, of course, a red hot topic all the time. I've just sort of said those points in the introduction. There's so much swirling around property. Should we start with this consistent rise of interest rates, and what's that doing to renters and to landlords and people thinking about purchasing?
Yes, yeah. Look, the interest rate rise. People were anticipating that it was going to remain on hold, but then obviously leading up to the recent announcement from the Reserve Bank meeting, it did rise another 0.25%, which it does affect the sentiment. It affects some confidence with people then needing to, I guess, recalibrate and speak to their advisors, go back to the bank, check how it affects their borrowing capacity in the range. If they're looking for houses, for example, in certain suburbs, it may affect the type of house that they can afford to purchase. There might need to be some compromises, or if not, in the type of property in the suburb or neighbourhoods that they can afford to buy in. So yes, I think there will be some welcome relief when things do hold consistently for a few months. I think that's when you'll see a bounce back, right, with encouragement in bidding, people selling and people buying property, because there is a low level of stock at the moment as far as properties for sale consistently across Melbourne.
Right, so that's adding to the problem, the low stock as well, the fact that there's not much there to purchase?
Yeah, it adds to the pressure when the supply is low but the demand for good quality homes, especially if we've used the term turnkey, or properties that have even been renovated and updated, ready to move in if they're not new, but there's no work to be invested in that needs to be done immediately. People will prioritise that and compete a little bit more for them, with the certainty of not needing to risk hiring builders or going through any planning processes for permits for works that need to be conducted, or even just uncertainty with inflation in trade, labour and material. People will fight a little bit more for turnkey property.
131873 on Australia Overnight. We're chatting to Mark Errichiello from Master Advocates Real Estate Services about property and real estate. 131873. Are you feeling the pinch? Have you cut back on a few things to sort of recalibrate, as you say there, Mark? And, I don't want to be trite about it, but I guess it is an opportunity to recalibrate, maybe be a bit more strategic, see what you've been doing in the past, and, as you say, pick a different suburb and maybe find a silver lining and somehow duck and weave. I'm doing it in my life to somehow just sort of survive this change of environment.
Yeah, correct, Pat. It's a period where you're going to see things improve, and the positives are that there's demand and migration growth and infrastructure improvements. Slowly over time, everything improves and grows in value. We see that in the property market. It's a long-term game. The rental prices at the moment and lack of supply for rental properties, that's causing other pressures. So slowly there's some investors that have the means to buy investment property looking at the better suburbs to buy and hold in and adding to that supply, but it's just not happening fast enough.
Now, we're a national program. I know you're based in Victoria. So what's your biggest concern? I think in recent times, the Victorian budget, stamp duty and tax and all sorts of things are being looked at by the Victorian government. What are your clients coming to you most about, and what are the concerns for you, if any?
Yeah, from the buyers advocacy side, a lot of clients come looking for help to find property, whether it's on or off market or pre-market. Just that advantage to be able to cut through with our networks and experience to find the right property, especially at times when there isn't much supply. Finding the right property and getting the due diligence done, accelerating that process to be ready first, and that's how you can cut through and break the momentum to buy property well.
Yes.
But also from the investment side, there isn't enough incentives when the housing supply is so low. Social housing is at low supply, not enough investment. General residential housing is at low supply. The vacancy rate's lower than I've ever seen in Victoria, but across the country, they're suffering in equal, the equal amount of stress. That there needs to be more supply based on the demand of our population and more migration coming. There needs to be more housing supply. So to do that, you really need to incentivise investors by having high stamp duty, high land tax, and increases suggestions of the COVID levies on top of land tax to come out of the debt due to COVID. That's not incentivising investors. The high interest rates as well were reasonably high. If you look historically, they're not that high,
right,
but high compared to the 2%
yes,
that we had in the last few years. Jumping to 6%, it's a bit of a pill. But, majority of the last 2 decades, 6 or 7% was the average, and pretty fair amount.
That's an interesting point. I guess we've had this consistent run of good times for at least a decade.
Yeah.
My dad still talks about 17% interest paying back. Was it the Keating years? So
Yes.
we've had it good for a long, long time. But it's a different environment now. We live in a different world now as well. So do you think that it's been worse and we can cope? I mean, it's not the end of the world, is it?
Well, look, there is. Cost of living is higher, and wage growth hasn't increased that much. So yes, it is difficult. It's not easy, but certainly I feel one of the factors that may help, and a lot of colleagues or associates in the industry probably you hear the same statement, that if there are incentives for the private housing sector, that will supply the balance in the rental market. Where they talk about rental costs rising or not enough supply, that pressure on the rental market will be eased. Then the social housing development from the government needs to improve that contribution.
Yeah.
But don't forget that the property sector, if people are buying more investment properties, that means more taxes that the government are able to access.
Yes.
To help ease debt as well, because there are
right.
There's about 40% to 50% of the government's income and state government that rely on housing taxes.
131873, as Mark talks about the pressure on the rental situation. Are you feeling it where you are? Are you a renter? Any stories to share on that front? 131873 on Australia Overnight. Mark Errichiello from Master Advocates is with us on the line. So creating an incentive for investors, are you suggesting, I don't want to put words in, the government, the state government in Victoria at least, is probably doing the opposite.
Yes.
So that might cause more problems. The social housing, which you referred to, the wave of migration. Are they not doing the right thing to fix this situation? I mean, yes, private people are providing housing stock. Now you're encouraging them to leave the market.
Yeah, that's right. That's definitely not encouraging them to enter. The incentives there, if they don't come, there won't be any increase in the rate of private market residential investors. And that is definitely an issue, because rental prices are only going to rise when there's a low supply.
And so if people are exiting the market because of high interest rates, because they're not so keen on being an investor anymore, does that mean there'll be more homes on the market in the coming sort of months?
Potentially, yeah. Like if you can, if most owners, if they're able to hold, they won't put their property on the market for sale unless it's the right time. Like buying and holding a long-term strategy is a better growth and wealth strategy with property. But some will find that pressure where the first thing to go will be their investment property. In Victoria, for example, in the last few years, there's been 130 30 reforms with the regulations, and part of that is the standard of safety compliance, which is important, but also maintenance, the standard maintenance minimum standards of residential property. So you're supplying a good, well-maintained property. You need the right to be able to manage the market value and get what it's worth. But on top of that, it can't be too much of a negative effect. There needs to be incentives, whether it's with tax or assisting with other areas to bring them back in to help supply the market.
So is it a done deal with these removal of incentives and the taxes and the increase of stamp duty and land tax and that stuff? Or is the government, will you be lobbying the state government in Victoria to reconsider these decisions?
I've been noticing a lot of the peak associations that do discuss and advocate with government for change and reforms and surveying. So there's been summits on, and there's been stamp duty inquiries. So that's all happening. Whether or not it will have any influence to change before it takes effect, because even in the commercial sector, there's been discussions of stamp duty incentives, or after a certain year there'll be stamp duty reductions, but there's no discussion about how it's actually going to work with any deferred taxes or land taxes that will take their place. How long will they be for? So that's something that will affect the commercial sector until there's some clarity around it.
And I guess, as you say, real estate's a long-term game. If you can hang in there and maybe offset your account or somehow cope with the repayments and hang in there, I mean, property is always a good thing to own and have, and it's a long-term game, and it's going to level out. And there is some opportunity sort of now and in the horizon.
Well, there are some areas, like in the last 12 months, prices did come back a little bit. There's still good areas in Victoria and in other states where you can get a good home for investment, where prices are still fair and reasonable. There may be more supply with certain properties where you can still buy at a fair and reasonable level, even sub $1 million, that can gain momentum as the market bounces back and be a good long-term asset. So there's areas and opportunities, especially properties that need a little bit of maintenance or a little bit of love,
right?
And that you can add value, not major structural work, but where less buyers are committed or eager to get things that need a little bit of refurbishing, then that angle of property investment for long-term buying and holding, improve it for a tenant and get a good return.
If you're strategic and you duck and weave a bit and use an expert like you and do your research, you might find a nugget of gold in the current situation. There's always opportunity in every situation. So we feel for those who are suffering through this, which is many of us. Actually, on that point, I've got to let you go now, but there's that debate about whether the Reserve Bank and this monetary policy is a bit old-fashioned, because only a third of the population have mortgages, and only a portion of that third have sort of, the top end where they might be suffering because of all this. So we're really putting the hammer on a small portion of the community to slow down the whole economy. So, there's that too, that debate as well, whether the Reserve Bank, should be doing things differently.
Well, that's right. You're punishing one group that's working hard in the population to help, contribute to the economy and build their wealth and future at the same time, so that they can be self-sufficient in retirement. Average Australian may buy their principal home and maybe one investment in their lifetime. There's only a few that are able to achieve the goal of having multiple 3, 4 or more investment properties that will bring a good return and income in retirement and have assets. Punishing a small group, it really needs to be a more collective effort of everyone contributing. So, there were discussions of removing stamp duty and different trials to say increase GST a portion. That was one of the things I heard in one of the recent inquiries. And that I thought worked well, because then collectively everyone contributes to it. Everyone that's making money, spending, might increase GST by 1% or so. But then
that'll slow the economy down. We'll spend less because of that, and it'll sort of bring inflation back. If we lift GST. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Maybe there's different ways of looking at it. All right, Mark, always a pleasure to have you on the show. I hope all is well in your world. We've got you on the screen on Zoom there, so keep plugging away. And we'll get you back on the program next time as I fill in for Clinton Maynard on Australia Overnight. We find you by putting in Master Advocates. It's Mark Errichiello, and you're a marvel. Thanks for your time.
Welcome. Thanks for having me, Pat, and look forward to next time.